Well, good morning. If you want to move over to the chairs over here, we'll get going. Can you believe it's December 1st? 25 days until Christmas. Anybody got all their shopping done? I've got all my shopping done because my wife does it, so I don't have to do it. And she keeps track of our grandkids and all that fun stuff. And we're just too old. We don't need anything. But glad you're here. I know there's at least one or two people live streaming. I think Jane Warren is there. And I expect that Carrie is there. And so I hope that you're there. Jane asked me if I would send her the link. So I expect that she's watching. The bad thing about live streaming is that we can't see who's on the stream. Like, remember when we did Zoom meetings and we could see everybody who was there? Well, the live streaming doesn't give us that opportunity and to interact. So everybody wave to Jane and Carrie. There we go. And anybody else that's out there. Maybe the McClearys are there. A lot of times, maybe Willie. We have a number of folks that off and on do the live streaming. We have next week is our Christmas party, and it's our last meeting in December and our last meeting in 2023, except for going to the play, Meet Me in St. Louis. And if you haven't signed up for that, I think there's 5 tickets left. I think we've got 5 people signed up. We got 10 tickets. And so because we started out getting 20 and we had less, so we didn't want to lose money on tickets. So now we have 5 tickets left. It's on December 10th. And the show is at 3, and we'll run a shuttle from here at 2. And it's Meet Me in St. Louis, and tickets are $26. So there's a sign up out there. You can sign up for that. Sign up for the Christmas party next week as well. We'll do some fun things. We do fun things here at Christmas, and we don't want to neglect our December birthdays. It was brought to my attention that we often neglect our December birthdays because we don't go out to a restaurant. So we will celebrate December birthdays as well. And we're thankful for that. Another thing that I learned last night, Judy Trotty texted my wife and her mother, Marjorie. Do you remember Marjorie? Sweet lady. Well, she was in the hospital the last couple of days for some procedures, and they would appreciate us praying for them. And also cards to Marjorie. And I have the home address if you want to send a card, but it would be appropriate for us to reach out to them. They pretty much stay secluded and have been since even the beginning of COVID. And you know how it goes when you start to get older. I think her mom is 95 now. And the last we celebrated was her 90th birthday. And so pray for them. I'll be visiting them at Methodist Stone Oak this afternoon to connect with them. And I was surprised that they even offered for me to come visit because they're pretty stringent. But if you take care of yourself and watch where you go, you don't get sick, and they don't get sick. This wasn't a COVID type sickness. It was a heart related thing. And sometimes when you start getting in your 90s, that just happens. So pray for them. And if you think of it, if you need the address, I can give you the address to send a card to Marjorie Long. Marjorie Long. No, she's Judy Trotty, and her mom is Marjorie Long. And they're in our directory, but I can find the address. I hesitated to publicize it, but I did email her this morning or text with her this morning saying, "Can I give out your home address?" And she said yes. So if you'd like to send a card, then let me know, and I'll during lunch get you the address. And I'm thinking there was one other person that we needed to be praying for, and that just slipped my brain. So, well, Chuck Beatty has had knee replacement and is doing well. Our own Gary has had cataract surgery, and he can see colors now. He always thought that the stained glass window of Jesus had a brown robe on, and he's just recently realized that it's red. So glad for that. Did she? I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, we'll keep praying for all of us, and looking forward to Christmas. Looking forward to Christmas. So today we have yes. Oh yeah, we have the buckets out. This is the last day we'll have the buckets out for household staff, HNS, and PCHAS. And we're close to $600 for household staff. We're just close to $200 for PCHAS and HNS. And I'm not twisting your arms. We'll do with what we have. But we want to show appreciation. And I think if I was a household staff person and I got $50, I'd be happy, or to know that you appreciated me. So that's out there. Today we'll be hearing from Ann Krause. She is the president and executive director of the Hemisphere Conservancy, and you'll explain that because I was thinking it should say conservatory, but I'm illiterate, so you'll explain what that means to me. She oversees all of the philanthropic and federal funding efforts supporting the transformation of the 1968 World's Fair into a 40-acre urban parks district in the heart of the city. And so I think my uncle was here for the World's Fair back in, was it 66, I think? 68? So we're happy to have Ann with us, and our coworker Ben, and I didn't catch Ben's last name, Hackett. And we'll be hearing from them. Make sure you have good questions. So welcome, and we're excited to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore, and I'm so grateful to be with all of you today. And yes, I will address the little elephant in the room. I'm a former military officer, and I think I jumped out of too many perfectly good airplanes back when I was young, and I sprained my ankle a lot. And I thought nothing of it until the warranty on my parts started expiring. And I had 2 torn tendons that Dr. Casillas worked on a couple months ago. And so I'm going to have a full recovery. I'm just a little slow in the meantime. I would love to ask, before I start telling you about Hemisphere's redevelopment, who went to the World's Fair and has a memory? Would you like to share it?
I just went a lot of times. I took my cousins from Louisiana, found out they didn't like heights when they got on the monorail.
Oops.
I guess Louisiana's a little flat.
Who else has a memory of the World's Fair? Yes, sir.
When I went there in '68, I stayed with my Aunt Edie in Uncle Bob and brought two friends with me from Kansas. And we liked the monorail too, but I like to shop. So I have a Hemisphere hockey puck that was there marble, and Hemisphere flag still, and two Hemisphere mugs with wooden handles on them that still look new.
That's neat. Anybody else? I didn't go to the fair, but my brother-in-law did, and he was 8 years old, and all he remembers was getting lost, and that was not a happy memory. But it was a really interesting time for San Antonio. It brought over 6 million people to our city, and a lot of people before the fair did not realize what a great place San Antonio was, and so it really kind of secured our reputation as being a great tourist destination. In order to make way for the fair, an entire neighborhood was destroyed and 2,000 residents were displaced. And then after the fair was over, there was no energy, no money, no plan. And so the area just kind of fell into disrepair for the better half, like 4.5 decades, actually. And don't feel like it's San Antonio's fault. That was not unusual. A lot of places that have hosted the Olympics or World's Fairs, it takes so much effort to pull those events off that in the 60s, sustainability really wasn't a word or a concern. So we were very similar to other places that had hosted those things. A really nice outcome is that nowadays, if you apply to be an Olympics host site, or to host a World Expo, your sustainability plan about what to do with the space after the event is part of your application package. So progress has been made. Back in 2009, Mayor Hardberger assembled a task force. He said, we are losing top-tier convention business, and what are we going to do with this real estate that's been sitting there in the middle of the city since 1968? And so this group of really smart people got together, and I label them that because I wasn't invited, and they had really good ideas. And one of their ideas was to straighten out Market Street and expand the convention center toward 281. And then they could deconstruct the western wing of the convention center because that was an old box, and that was part of the problem about attracting top-tier conventions. And there was this nice synergy between redeveloping Hemisphere and improving the convention center at the same time. One of these smart people that was on the visioning task force was a man by the name of Andrés Andújar. And he is an architectural engineer. He had worked on the River North expansion of the Riverwalk. He worked on the Denver International Airport. He had worked on some really large projects before. And he had so much great input to this volunteer task force that the City Council of San Antonio actually asked him, would you be the CEO of the Hemisphere Park Area Redevelopment Corporation? And he said yes. And so in 2011, City Council stood up, we call it H Park now, because that's a lot shorter. It's a 501c3 local government corporation, and his task, his whole team, they're focused on improving and expanding the parks so that we're creating, if you will, the Central Park of San Antonio. We didn't have a place for people to gather in large quantities like that before, in a beautiful open space that anchored our downtown. And so that's what we're making happen. So I'd love to show you some slides, and Ben and I will make sure that we leave enough time at the end for any questions you may have, because it's a really complex and dynamic project, and I'm sure there are lots of different questions. So I went to a really interesting executive education class at Harvard Business School, and it was called Strategic Perspectives in Nonprofit Management. And one of the things they challenged us to do is have an aspirational vision. Not like, what do you do when you go to work every day? Like, what are you doing and why is it important? And so our aspirational vision is truly to create one of the world's great public places. And we want to do it right in the heart of our city. For so many years, San Antonio has suffered from a bit of an inferiority complex, saying, well, we're not Dallas, we're not Houston, okay is okay. But you know what? San Antonio is amazing. San Antonians are amazing. And we feel like we deserve something world class. And so we are sticking to that. These are just some of the things that we are thinking about, but I'll be touching on them through photos and more explanation. So for those of you, because you go to church here, you're more familiar with downtown than a lot of other people are, but just for the sake of getting the vision together, we call the Hemisphere District this whole area that includes the convention center. So we don't control the convention center, but it's obviously an important neighbor of ours. You see that our borders are 281 to the east, Cesar Chavez to the south, South Alamo Street to the west, and Market Street to the north. Our 40-acre urban parks district that we are developing is being done in a 3-park series, the first being Yanaguana Garden. I don't know if anyone's been to Yanaguana Garden, but it was designed for you. The woman who designed it said the design theme is for play from pre-K to gray. And so there's a little bit of something for everyone there. We opened that park in October of 2015, so just a little over 8 years ago, and we are encroaching on the 4.7 million visitor mark, making us the second busiest park per acre in the state of Texas already, and there's a lot more coming. Another really nice thing to realize is that 85% of our visitors are residents, and they come from everywhere in the city, and they're of all ages, abilities, and socioeconomic levels. So it is truly a melting pot, and we're bringing the whole community together that way. The Civic Park is in the former footprint of where the western wing of the convention center used to be. That's the one that got torn down. We have opened the first phase of it already, and the second phase is underway, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. And then last but not least, we are going to be building more green space around the base of the iconic Tower of the Americas, which was the structure that was built for the World's Fair in the 60s prior to the World's Fair in 68. So what you see outlined in that turquoise, the red, and the gold, that is the 40-acre Hemisphere District. So of our 40 acres, City Council said we want 19 acres to be green space and parkland, and the other 17 acres can be developed. And the reason they need to be developed is to create revenue streams to support the park going forward. We're already out of the city's general operating budget, and so we need funds coming in so that we can operate the park, put on programming, as well as build the subsequent sections of it. And we get revenue streams in the form of lease payments from developable parcels. So just to be very clear, there's no development on parkland. It is completely separate. So you'll have development alongside parkland. It provides visual interest, architectural interest, and one of the important things of the developments we're putting on is many of them are residential. We are trying to restore some of the density that was lost through eminent domain in the 60s and get more people living in the urban core, which adds a lot of vibrancy and vitality to downtown. The remaining 4 acres, by the way, for anyone who does math, saying, okay, 19 plus 17, that's 36. What's with the other 4? That's for streets and sidewalks and right-of-ways so that people can get through the park. As you recall, it was a neighborhood once, and so we have some existing streets. They were kind of blocked off for when they had to collect tickets during the fair, and now we're trying to reincorporate those streets so that cars driving slowly, pedestrians, cyclists, people in wheelchairs, babies in strollers can all get around. Another important thing is that it helps reconnect this district with our neighbors in La Villita, Southtown, and even under 281, reaching out to the east side. A lot of those neighborhoods were disenfranchised and really separated from other communities in San Antonio through that eminent domain and through the fair, and we're trying to get everyone back together again, and it's working. So Yanaguana Garden is the one I told you about that we opened first, and here's some pictures from it. All of our public art is done by local artists, and one of the things that we were told time and time again, we always do a series of public workshops before we do any design of the parks, and we ask San Antonians, what do you want to see at your park? And they say, we want water and we want shade, or else we're not coming, and we're not coming 12 months a year. We want the colors to reflect our community, and so it's a very colorful place, and also they said they want somewhere to gather, and we're delivering that as well. Oh, I should point out, see the splash pad in the upper left-hand corner there? That's the Union Pacific Railroad splash pad. That is our most popular feature at Yanaguana Garden, and whenever we have to shut down for maintenance, People give us negative ratings on Facebook immediately. They get very upset with us because they like it so much. And when it's triple digits in the summer and so hot, it's a free place that's resort quality that anyone can go to. And so it's really a high level of execution. People who can't necessarily afford the JW Marriott or the Hyatt Hill Country Village for the weekend can come to Hemisphere and make a day of it, and it doesn't cost them a cent. There is beautiful turf. There are Adirondack chairs and shade devices, and so people come with a picnic basket and they make a day of it, and it's really a nice way to cool off. So this is what we call a heat map. And the numbers you see are the city council districts 1 through 10. And what this reflects is we do daily park visitor surveys. And we accost people in the park and say, will you please answer a few questions for us? Because we want to collect data about whom we're serving. So we ask them, how old are you? How much money do you make? Where do you live? What's your zip code? So that we can get a grand sense of our visitors. That's why we know 85% of our visitors are locals. When we plug in their zip codes into this heat map, the whole city lights up. So people are coming from absolutely everywhere. And where you see red are the highest concentrations of where people are coming from. And just for your bearings, Hemisphere is in District 1, but we serve all districts. So Civic Park is our flagship. That is compared to Yanaguana Garden. Yanaguana Garden is 6 acres total. 4 acres are parkland and 2 acres are developable parcels. Civic Park is 14 acres, so more than twice the size of Yanaguana Garden. We did that on purpose. It's much easier to start something and do something small and do it well so you can show what can be done. And Yanaguana Garden has been a tremendous, international success. People know about Hemisphere already just because of Yanaguana Garden. So the first phase of Civic Park opened to the public in September. It was September 30th. And since then, it's already attracted 250,000 people. Phase 2 of Civic Park is underway. That will open to the public at the end of next year or in January of 2025. So the park part will be ready. The developable parcels are a little bit behind that. But the important thing about having the park ready is that San Antonio is hosting the NCAA Men's Final Four basketball tournament in April of 2025, and that's going to be the place where everyone gathers for the celebrations and the concerts, and that's a really good thing for San Antonio. It brings a lot of money to our city. Phase 1 construction, as I mentioned, that opened to the public already. That's the green part, and you can see that's a picture of me on the bottom. I was so excited. My mouth was wide open. I had no idea until the cameras were clicking. But after working on this project so long, I guess I couldn't contain my joy. But you see some of the aspects of the park. You see we have some beautiful springs that are made of limestone, and they are meant to they're inspired by Pedernales Falls and the Balcones Escarpment up in the hill country. There is a tree-lined promenade. It has Mexican sycamores planted every 20 feet. The woman who designed this park, Catherine Gustafson, said it's the place where San Antonians will see and be seen, much like Paris. And there's a great lawn that can hold 10 to 15,000 people for a concert. And also in the bottom right-hand corner, that's where they came to observe the most recent eclipse. So phase 2 construction is what you see in gold, and that's what we're working on right now. And that will involve a hardscape plaza at the northwest corner of the park. So that's where South Alamo and Market Street meet. That's the busiest pedestrian intersection in our entire city, and it's 2/10 of a mile south of the Alamo. So the Alamo is being redone, and Hemisphere is being redone, and so we're making downtown San Antonio a lot more interesting, a much greater destination, and much more walkable. That's this Zocalo, this picture is if you were standing on that promenade looking back toward a hardscape that we're going to be building. And on an average day, that hardscape can have restaurant tables and chairs and umbrellas out. But when a big musical act comes, they can push all that aside, and that stage that service can be repurposed as a performance plaza. If the Pope comes, if Mick Jagger comes, if the Spurs win their next championship, we have somewhere to go. You know what? There's another design feature I want to call to your attention that's kind of subtle. Hold on. I missed my opportunity. So as I mentioned, the promenade is in the foreground, but you see a channel of water running alongside the promenade. And what that is it's a shallow pool of water, and we're calling it an acequia. And that's meant to mimic the historic acequias that the early settlers used to water their crops. And so it's a water feature because, as you remember, the San Antonio community said, we want water and we want shade or we're not coming. So that's one of the ways, that and the springs that I pointed out are ways that we can have water. So you might be asking yourself, well, gosh, water is a precious resource. How are you planting hundreds of trees? How are you filling these water features? How are you watering 12,000 plantings to make the place beautiful? And you'll be amazed, we are not using one drop of San Antonio's drinking water. There is the river, the San Antonio River actually comes up in between Civic Park and the Convention Center. And when you have a river, rivers do not have liners like a swimming pool. Rivers always have seepage that comes out of them at any given place. And our neighboring convention center has a French drain system around their basement so that the water from the river doesn't get into their basement and cause them trouble. That water comes in at the rate of 28 gallons a minute. And it struck us, we're like, wow, we have an opportunity to repurpose that water. So we built a 41,000 gallon cistern underneath that great lawn. We can fill it in just a little over a day. And we are able to take care of all the irrigation needs as well as all of the water enjoyment needs at the park without having to use one drop of drinking water, which I think is pretty great. Yes, ma'am.
In the opening slides, you show that wonderful water pad that the children, and I'm sure some of the younger parents with them are probably too. But I notice in this shot, you're showing some people of more advanced age cooling their feet off of it. Is that going to be encouraged or discouraged?
It is encouraged, and I lead by example. I have been known to take my shoes off and get in the springs myself. The water never gets higher than 18 inches. And so we encourage people to wade as opposed to swim. But the water is actually treated to be swimming pool quality. We just can't call it a pool or else we'd need to provide lifeguards. But they are meant to be enjoyed. We can't imagine putting something in San Antonio that has a cooling effect and telling people they can't enjoy it. So we say paws and feet are encouraged. So here are some pictures from other parks that we benchmarked 36 other parks. We're members of the Highline Network, which is a great reuse story that was co-founded by Robbie Hammond, who's from San Antonio. The Highline is extraordinarily successful in New York City, and so we belong to this network of other parks that have reused areas so that we can all share and learn from each other. We do tons of activations. Some of the city's biggest events are now happening at Hemisphere. We had Dia de los Muertos, we had Luminaria, we had Diwali, we had a Veterans Day event, and we host our own events, but we also encourage other nonprofit partners out there doing their great work to come do their thing at Hemisphere and use us as a venue, and that's a really great way that we can partner. Tower Park, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it's still under design. We don't have any bond funding for this yet. But we do have some philanthropic commitments and that we're working on, and one of them is going to be a covered sports pavilion where people can play basketball and possibly pickleball. And one thing you may be interested in is the Gonzaba Foundation is looking to invest in an area that's designed for older adults, 65 plus. And that will impact the seating and the activations there as well. So while Yanaguana Garden might have that younger kid and multi-generational family feel, there will be a section at Tower Park that was designed specifically with you in mind. So one of the things that we inherited as a result of the World's Fair were 21 historic structures. Some of them were houses built in the mostly 1890s. And they were not destroyed. Most of the houses in the area were destroyed to make way for the fair, but some of them were in good locations to be used as restaurants and retail. And then another thing we inherited were some pavilions that were meant to be temporary, and because there was no plan afterward, those temporary pavilions were left there, and then they turned 50 and they became protected. So we have a mixed bag of historic structures, but what we're doing is we're restoring each one, we're rehabilitating them. And we had enough bond funding to stabilize the exteriors of them. And then one by one, we focus philanthropic efforts and we bring it up to code. So we're putting in HVAC systems, plumbing, electrical, you name it. And then what we do is we publish a request for interest and we ask small, locally owned businesses to come operate out of them. So we have a Dough Pizzeria, for example, Commonwealth Coffee House and Bakery. We don't want chains, we want local businesses. What we do is we then charge them a single-digit percentage of their gross monthly revenue as their lease payment, which we then reinvest in the park. So it's a great opportunity for a small business to have success. Dough Pizzeria, for example, brings in $3 million in annual revenues out of less than 2,000 square feet. And that's because 700,000 people a year go to Yanaguana Garden. And now that we have Civic Park, we anticipate that number will be 1.2 million a year. Imagine the impact of that foot traffic on a small local business. We are delighted that our partners are successful because it helps us be successful too, while giving the park visitors something that enhances their stay. A lot of people enjoy sampling all the different beers and wines and burrata and pizza and salads that you can enjoy. So this is a list of some of them. Of our 21 structures, 10 have been rehabilitated, so we're almost halfway there. But it's really, really fun to see people come make a day of it. Even if they didn't remember their picnic basket, they can still have food and drink. So I encourage you to come take advantage of that. So I mentioned our P3s. The first of them, of our public-private partnerships, is this apartment complex, and that's at Yanaguana Garden in some of that area that the council set aside for developable parcels. There are 151 apartment units there, ranging from studio up to 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and there's a lot of parking there, so there's enough parking for the residents, as well as a couple hundred spaces left over for park visitors. And that is fully leased. And we're starting to bring those residents back to the urban core. They have Hemisphere as their backyard, which they like a whole lot. And then what's really neat is that half of the units are priced on a sliding scale to accommodate people who are making between 50 and 80% of area median income, so that more people can afford to live downtown. It's not Section 8 housing, but it's what they call workforce housing, so that a teacher or a nurse or someone making a living wage can afford to live there. This is a view as if you were kind of elevated on Market Street looking south and west across the park. Another apartment unit is going to be going in along Market Street at the Civic Park, and so we'll get more residents there as a result of that. And on November 14th, David Zachary broke ground on a Curio line of the Hilton. It's going to be a 200-room boutique hotel directly across the street from the Hilton Palacio del Rio that his grandfather built just in time for the World's Fair in the 60s. It's quite a legacy project. And then I think it's really important to note that, yes, we are getting bond funding, but we are going to return that bond funding in spades back to the city. So we had a third-party economist estimate that for every dollar of public funding we get through the bond program, we're going to return it 7 times to the city, and that's through job creation and tax revenues. So I was hired by Andres. I mentioned Andres. He's the CEO of H Park still. He's the one and only. And he took on the role professionally in 2011. And by 2013, it became really obvious that public funds alone were going to be insufficient to execute that world-class vision. So he hired me in January of 2014, almost exactly 10 years ago, next month, and he said, I want you to set up a philanthropic arm so that the community foundations, corporations can participate in this transformation. And so what the Conservancy does, it's not the conservatory, it is the Conservancy. The Conservancy raises the philanthropic dollars to augment those public funds so that we don't have to cut corners on that world-class vision. So what I'd like to do is invite my teammate, Ben Hackett. He is our corporate relations manager, and he's going to tell you more about what we do.
Thank you, Anne. My colleagues and I all love working for the Hemisphere Conservancy. We get to work in the middle of a park. There are children laughing and playing and sometimes screaming right outside of our office windows, and we just love it. We love being in the middle of the action and hearing everything. Like Ann said, we raise philanthropic support so that we don't have to compromise on our aspirational vision to be one of the world's great places. And one really amazing thing about the Conservancy is that we are not a one-trick pony. If there's, for a donor, if there is a specific area of interest that a donor is interested in, chances are we're doing something within that area of interest. So if you're interested in arts, or education, or a capital construction, building the project, or if you're interested in dance or health, like we are doing it all. If you're interested in environment, we're doing it. So this is just this is a picture of our different buckets. So capital construction, a donor who's interested in helping build the park can make a donation, a capital donation to the Hemispheric Conservancy. We make sure that it goes to the right place to support that effort. Programming includes our health and wellness program, our educational programming. It includes what we call, we have a story time that brings out young families every week. That's very popular. We also have something called Super Fun Saturdays. Once a month for a few months out of the year, we have an event on a Saturday, and I've been to a couple of these so far, and they are packed with kids, and the kids all have a great time. Programming is another area, environmental. So I'm going to talk about trees in a little bit, but Ann mentioned we have over 200 trees being planted in the Civic Park, and with the environmental stewardship with our water reclamation program. That's another area. We also have our operations, which actually, that's very important. It helps us maintain the park. It helps our staff actually activate the park and market the park to make sure we have people that are coming into the park. And then historic preservation too is another big effort of our philanthropic work. This is a picture of the Peggy Mays Gardens. This is an example of a capital campaign donation. Capital campaign donations can be anywhere from $1 up to sky's the limit. This is an example of a $1 million donation that we were very just honored to get from the Mays Family Foundation. And in recognition of their donation to the Conservancy, we actually planted a series of gardens, and we named it after the matriarch of the Mays family, Peggy Mays, who passed away in 2020. These are beautiful. They are up and they are running. They are very green right now. We expect them to stay green. Actually, the irrigation for these gardens is tied into the water reclamation project that we have right now, and so these will stay green and stay beautiful. This is an example of historic preservation work that philanthropic dollars support too. On your left, this is called the Longini Herman House, an 1890s structure. On your left, this is an example of the house as we found it. You can see the exterior was kind of caving in on itself, and the balconies are kind of coming together. The windows had some problems, and we used a combination of public funds and philanthropic support to stabilize and rehab the exterior of it. So this is a before on the left, and after on the right of the exterior rehabilitation of the Longini Herman House. We are actively raising money for this house in particular to rehabilitate the inside of the house, get it all the way up to code so that we can lease it out to 1 or 2 small businesses who will come and do their work in the house. And that actually, when the small businesses come in, that provides the revenue stream needed to actually make sure that this house stays updated and stays active. This is a very big tree. This is, we transplanted 31 trees, 31 big trees from around downtown that were set to be cut down by neighboring developments. This was a pure act of philanthropy. So because of donations and philanthropic support, we were actually able to save these trees and bring them in. So our trees in Civic Park not only include trees that we planted at a nursery and brought in, but also these historic trees that were planted and brought in and saved at Hemisphere. The trees, we actually, to honor the trees, honor the donors of the trees, we developed a one-of-its-kind augmented reality tree donor program, and this is very popular. Of the 200 trees that we have in Civic Park, about 130 of them have already been sponsored, and what we do is, instead of putting a plaque on a tree, which is just asking to be vandalized, and they're very expensive to maintain, and if somebody vandalizes it, we have to replace it. We actually, and I'll give Ann credit for this, what Ann discovered was that the city arborist actually puts a dog tag sized label on each tree for accounting purposes. And Ann saw that as real estate. And so what we do is we take that dog tag size thing, we put a QR code on there. And what people can do is walk up to it with their phone, scan the QR code, and they'll see this, a memorial or a tribute on the tree. The memorials are good for the life of the tree. So there's a 2 to 3 year warranty on the tree, and then once that tree is established and up and running, that is that person's tree for the life of the tree. So 75 to 300 years for a live oak tree. And so this is a very popular way that people are actually leaving legacies at the park that they expect to last for generations to come. On average, we sell these at cost, and so on average it costs us about $7,000 to actually grow, transplant, irrigate, plant the tree in the park. And so for $7,000 for a donation, we give out these tributes, and you can go to the park, we can walk around, pick your tree out, you get to write your own tribute, we get a picture, you can have an audio file, and like I said, these are all good for the life of the tree. So this is a really very popular way to leave a legacy in downtown San Antonio. This is a picture of our programming. This is another effort that we raise money for. Programming is purely through philanthropy, through donations and sponsorships. This is a picture of our Get Fit program. Get Fit happens multiple times a month, and it covers, they do mental health, they do physical health. And like I said, this is something that we only are able to do because of philanthropy, because of donations and sponsorships. We take a lot of pride in our donor stewardship and the way that we recognize our donors. This is a picture of the Bank of America promenade. And Bank of America, we were very lucky a few years ago. They made a capital campaign donation to the Hemisphere Conservancy, and it was and correct me if I say this wrong, it was their largest donation that year to any middle market nonprofit in the country. And so we were very pleased and very honored to get that donation. In honor of that donation, we actually named the Central Promenade in Yanaguana Garden after Bank of America. And that's something that we sat down and we worked with the donor to make sure that we were doing something that they felt honored their donation appropriately, and we're just very pleased to make it happen. This is a picture of our Hemisphere leadership. There's Ann in there. Also city leadership. You can see Mayor Ron Nierenberg there, and leadership from Bank of America too. But we don't just honor our largest donors, we honor all of our donors. This is a picture of, we've got our donor rings on the left, and then on the whole right side there, that is a picture of our donor wall. So all of our donors, whether they've donated $1 or $5 million, get their name on the donor wall. And we list those names in alphabetical order. And the upper right picture is actually a picture of the Hemisphere staff. That is our team, all pointing to our names on the donor wall. Everybody, 100% of people who work for Hemisphere donate to Hemisphere. And that is because we believe in what we're working for. We see it every day, we're in the middle of it, and we really believe in our aspirational vision, and we want to be a part of making Hemisphere one of the world's great places. And that is the end of my portion of the presentation. I believe that is the end of the presentation, so we're going to open it up to questions. On the donor wall, we do it for 1 year. So if you donate in 2023, your name will be on the wall for the entire year for 2024. So we do it on an annual basis. Yes, sir.
Yes, I've heard that the Tower of the Americas is reaching the end of its useful life. So they're talking about renovating it. Do y'all know anything about that? Or?
I probably know as much as you do. I have heard that there is money to renovate the outside of the Tower of Americas. Hemisphere is actually responsible for the area at the base of the tower. The tower itself is not under our jurisdiction. That is a contract with Landry's. Is that what it is? Yeah. The city is responsible for the tower.
And the other thing I wanted to ask all about is, I keep seeing this constantly, is I'm sure you've heard about it, that the Spurs want a new arena, and they, as I understand it, they're talking about putting it at the ITC Center. But they want to build a baseball park downtown. And the thing that keeps popping up
Right. With regard to the Hemisphere District, so the 40 acres that we control, there are no changes to the design for us. Our plans have already been blessed by council, and nothing's going to change that. The Institute of Texan Cultures, which is, I believe, the space you're talking about, that's a University of Texas system property. And Andres was on the steering committee for them. I also briefed the steering committee to let them know what their neighbors to the west were doing. And we just asked that whatever they do, please have it make sense from the 10,000-foot view, because we don't have a vote on what goes on there, but we can at least suggest that let's make it all make sense. I still haven't heard a straight answer, to be honest with you, with regard to what the UT system wants to do. And it's actually a two-pronged situation where they want to address what to do with the actual collection that's in the ITC. And you might be reading that one of the spaces that they have identified as being a good host for the collection is just south of the Alamo. And I don't know what the status of that is. So that's one. And then the other question that the steering committee was answering is, what do we do with the real estate? And so that's the area that I keep, I'm reading the same thing you are, but again, it's not, it's a neighbor of Hemisphere, but it's not our purview. And so we don't really have a seat at the table.
But I was thinking if they build something there, it's gonna affect y'all, 'cause it's right next door, and you're gonna have hundreds of thousands of people going to games and stuff. Now, the thing I'm concerned about is, I guess, eminent domain. If the city comes in and says, we're gonna put a baseball park there, you tell me that's not gonna happen?
I don't see the UT system taking that.
No, I'm talking about the baseball park at the corner where the garden is, at the corner of, used to be Durango, Cesar Chavez and Alamo.
Okay, so you mean Yanaguana Garden? No, Yanaguana Garden is not going to get turned into. The thing is, public funds have already been spent on that park. Yeah. I don't believe that to be true. Yeah. Anytime city council has expended bond funds there was a lot of bond funding to help construct Yanaguana Garden. That would never go over. I've heard other conversations about baseball park. I know Randy Smith of Weston Urban he's passionate about AAA baseball, and they're talking about doing it more over on that side of downtown. But Yanaguana Garden is safe. Thank you. I would be concerned too. I love that place. Yes, ma'am.
One of the impacts of doing anything designed to bring people is the transportation question. Could you somewhat mention any discussion around increased public transportation to accommodate parking further away and maybe an end to enjoy the new downtown area?
That's a great question. We're constantly in conversation with VIA. For example, we have 17 VIA stops within walking distance of the park, for starters. And I do believe that once these large events start happening more and more often, there's going to be more public demand for those off-site parking like you're talking about, and take a bus and take a ride in. Has not been fully baked by VIA yet, but the conversations are being had. The other thing is we have places where people can park and lock their bikes. For the big events, we encourage Uber and rideshare, because even though parks and parking go together, we're never going to have 15,000 parking spots for a 15,000 person event. People are going to have to use different modes of transportation to get to the park. But we think that our conversations with VIA are they began at the right time, because they began years ago when we were anticipating this impact.
Because daily use of these facilities, the park aspect of it, the free walk in, enjoy the shade, bring a picnic lunch, can really only be enjoyed if your way home is not an exorbitant number of blocks with small children to get to. So we run it for special activities. VIA does all of those satellite parking situations, but to do it daily.
But that's why we have parking. For instance, I brought up the example of the 68 apartments where we had the developer do enough parking spaces for his tenants, but we asked him to build a couple hundred more spaces for our control. So all of our P3 partners, we say build enough parking for your tenants and make sure that you build overflow spaces for park visitors. So our daily use visitors are covered. In addition to the parking structures that are being built with the P3s, we also have 2 surface lots, and the most popular one is just north of the Magic Theater on South Alamo Street. Anybody else? Well, we thank you for your kind attention. Ben and I will be sticking around for lunch, so we'll split up to make sure we're at different tables. So if you have any other questions for us, just let us know. And if you'd like to come get a personal tour, make sure you give Ben your information, and we'd be happy to host you anytime. Thank you.
We could do that. Thank you so much for being with us. I have a token for you. This recently we had our Veterans Day celebration. This is something that we've been giving to our veterans, which is you don't happen to be a veteran, do you?
I'm the only one on the team.
There you go. So that's just a special that we have because we've did that in November and had our Veterans Day.
That's really nice. Thank you very much.
And this is a history of First Presbyterian Church that was developed for our 50th anniversary.
When was that?
150th anniversary. I'm sorry. I'm still acclimating.
In 1995. That's exciting.
And so we celebrated our 175th in 2016 or 17, shortly after I came. So we're working on even more history. We don't have anybody that's standing up to write another book, unless there's someone in this room that is willing to do that. But thank you, and we're happy that you're going to join us for lunch, and thank you for volunteering to sit at different tables so we can get to know you better and have some questions. Let our guests eat their lunch, but do take advantage of asking questions. So let me pray, and we'll have lunch together. Father, we're thankful for time together today, thankful for things that are happening in San Antonio that are beneficial to the city, beneficial to us as individuals. Thank you for folks that are talented and geared to be working on these things, and we just pray that you would work things out as we look forward to the things that are happening now and that are planned for the future. Pray that you be with us today around these tables, give us good fellowship, good conversation. Thank you for the food. Thank you for those who prepared it. Thank you for those who will be serving it. And just give us a good time of fellowship today. In Jesus' name, amen.